Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Very Small Talk. I am very excited for today's conversation because we're going to be talking about painting. It'll be the first show that we've dedicated to painting, and my guest is Malte, and he's a Great Dane, and he focuses on painting busts, miniature busts. So as you can see from the little montage of his work, he's very accomplished, and I'm very excited to learn from this man. So let's say hello to Malte. Malte, welcome to the show.
Hi, Adam.
How you
Thanks for
doing?
having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. All mine. All mine. It's great to have you on. I've been uh, an admirer of your work, probably mainly this year. I've just discovered your work and that, but I think it's phenomenal, and I've just started sculpting busts, and I have no clue how to paint them properly. So this is this is for my benefit, and hopefully the rest of the viewers as well will learn a shed load about how to paint today. So yeah, thank you very much for being a good sport and coming on the show. So
Thank
um,
you. Well, I'm happy
yeah,
to be here.
yeah, it's good. So you live in Denmark, in Copenhagen, yeah?
Yeah.
Um, and you have a big community over there, hobby community?
Yeah, actually, probably bigger than you would imagine. Um, we have like a physical workshop in Copenhagen that's like a shared communal space. It's really, really nice. It's like pay what you can slash pay what it's worth to you. It's called Chromonaut, and you might also even see the name of it down in the banner there,
Mm.
because we just set up a Twitch account. So the plan is that we're going to stream some of the things that are happening in the workshop, and I'm going to do some streaming from home as well, like from the projects that I have on the desk at home. And hopefully, more members of the community are going to join in on that. So we're trying to really boost a little bit more of our online presence because we do have a very strong like a community here in the city, and it's really for everyone. So if you're in Copenhagen or if you're in Denmark and hearing this, you're very welcome to come down.
It's brilliant. That sounds very, very good, actually. You know, the whole ethos of that Chromonaut sounds brilliant. Pay what you can. So that means that it's not exclusive anymore. You're inviting people in, whatever you know. So that's good. And this shared Twitch account sounds really interesting as well. So, other than yourself, then who are potential Twitchers from the Chromonaut community?
Could be somebody like Tuco, maybe. He's like a very big figure on the scene here in Denmark. He's painted for miniatures for something like 30 years or something. It's pretty crazy. And he's won everything there's to win out there of the medals. He was won the Golden Demons. He's won Monte Santino. He's done it all.
Sorry,
Uh,
what's his handle? Sorry, yeah,
it's Tue, Tue,
TUE. Okay,
Kaae.
AAE.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna look him up. Wow,
So
maybe
he's
put link
yeah, I
in.
think he's not too savvy with on the tech side, but he's definitely like a big persona in the community. But it could be any number of people really. It's very new, the Twitch thing, so I'm not gonna make any promises here for for any other
Yeah,
names.
right. Stitch anyone
Yeah,
else up. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Oh, that's good. That's exciting. And what a project, hey? And yeah, something that's good to be part of. Very healthy by the sounds of it. And encourage each other. That's brilliant. So,
yeah.
how long have you been in the hobby? How long have you been doing this?
So I haven't actually been painting for that long. I started. So most people they paint Warhammer as when they're children, and then they. I think a lot of people kind of got revitalized into the hobby in during the lockdown.
Yeah, right.
This is the story that I hear a lot. For me,
Mhm.
I started in the lockdown, so I've only been painting for maybe 2 or 3 years or something like this. Um, but I just very quickly got obsessed with it, and just been obsessed with painting ever since. Yeah. So I think that's like the short story, and we can go
Yeah, yeah.
into the steps.
And that obsession is bearing fruit because I had a look at your profile right from the start and how it's progressed rapidly into very, very fine art on the busts, and it seems like you've like really focused in on the busts now. I think there was a few, and we'll have a look later, that some of the larger scale, what do they call that, hero scale, 75 mil stuff. But
Yeah, 75 mil.
yeah,
Mm.
but you're adding content on Instagram every day. Lots of videos on reels on how you apply the paint, which I find fascinating. It is, because I'm probably like a lot of painters, very heavy-handed, and you're using these fine glazes and stuff to build up the color transitions, which is, it's like I need to get to that place definitely where I've got the patience, or the savvy, the knowledge of how to do it. Because I think it's like most things, isn't it? I marvel at what people are doing, and then never go about trying to emulate that. So for me, this whole journey is to try and learn from people that are doing what I like and try and emulate. So yeah, this is good, because like I say, I've got some. Well, I showed you one earlier, but I've got this brute that needs to be painted. So I last night I primed him, and hopefully I'll learn a little bit on how to get some colour on him soon.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
so I think my take on that thing you said about being heavy-handed is that it's not so much the motor skill of controlling the brush that you get good at, because this skill, I think, is like, I think it's a secondary byproduct. The thing that beginners, or not like all beginners, but the thing that I see sometimes that people struggle with is more having like a good understanding of how to control the palette, actually, and how to control the thickness of layers that they apply. So um, and just having like like, it comes with experience, I think, but just having like some self-confidence in the process of going from something that's very ugly and then refining it and making it look much prettier, because every like miniature has like an ugly stage, I
Yeah.
think.
Some
And
more than
and
others.
yeah, some more than others. And what you don't want to do is put it down in the ugly stage and then just put it away because it isn't blended or whatever.
Guilty.
But yeah. So, but actually doing the blending is from a mechanical standpoint is not that difficult. So it's easy to learn, but you just have to have the confidence and the belief that if you practice the technique and if you keep doing the technique, you'll get a nice result.
Yeah, and I think that's it. There's that's quite common, but you see a lot of things on Instagram that are pucker. They're finished, they're incredibly good, and that standard, when you look at it and you see you got your miniature in your hand, you're like, oh my, that is
Mm.
just, what the heck, how am I ever going to get there, and then some people would just be put off by that. But I think seeing the whips, a lot of people put their whips on there as well, the work in progress, um, and that they're very encouraging, because you see when they've got the base colors on, they are ugly, aren't they? They're just blocking it out and stuff like that, and you think, okay, so there is, and also I find it very encouraging to go back to someone's beginning, is very, see where they're at now, but see their journey somewhat and their progression, and that just sort of encourages me to think, like, so you've been on Instagram what, 3 or 4 years maybe?
I
So
think close, maybe 2 or 3, I think.
right, 2 or 3 years. It's very easy to just see what you're doing now and go, blimey, never. But
Yeah.
actually, there is a journey and a development, and yeah, and in your case, it's been remarkably rapid, and I think that probably talks to maybe your character tenacity to actually just keep going, because there would have been stages where actually it's like, oh, this isn't working, and then someone's just giving you a little bit of advice or something. And that's what this channel's about, is like sharing what we know, and we've got a wonderful community for that, haven't we? There's loads of people that offer their experience and stuff. So, but like, to talk to that point, then I'd like to show one of your first miniatures.
Oh no.
Not to embarrass you, but just to say, look, this guy's human.
Sure, let's
So
have a look.
let's talk
Yeah.
about this one. This little fella.
Yeah. This guy is my first ever painted miniature. And I got him just for Dungeons and Dragons, like a D&D game. And this is just probably his name is something like a dwarf barbarian or something from
Yeah.
Reaper Miniatures.
Hmm.
And as you can see, it's base coat and wash. And if we're lucky, there is even like a bit of a highlight on the top of the head, but that's probably about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I can see that. It's a slight tone change there, isn't there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And of course the mold line, of course, you know.
Like a very, very well pronounced mold line.
Reaper are renowned for their moldings, aren't they? They're brilliant though for getting into the D&D, you know, sphere, aren't they? You know, they're very, very affordable. They're soft as well, which can make it a bit tricky. Some of their, you know, longer items, their spears and stuff, just stay bent regardless of what you do. But
Mm.
I mean, there's a store near, say, an hour or so away from me, and they have got a whole wall full of Reaper miniatures, and a lot of them I wouldn't pick up, but then some of the larger monsters, like a beholder or something like that, I'm just like, yeah, I'm very tempted to go back there and shed a few dollars and get them, just because, you know, it's a beholder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, this is good. So this was one of your firsts.
Yeah,
Um,
the first actually.
the
Yeah.
the first. So we were lucky to get this one out of the attic, I should
Mm.
imagine, wasn't it? Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah.
brilliant.
I haven't seen this guy in quite a while.
And
You asked me to take a photo for the show, and I was like, oh, but yeah.
were you drawn to this guy? The obvious parallels then. So this guy looks a little bit Norse, and he has a
Yeah,
red beard and but no hair. So was you naturally drawn to this character?
yeah. I'm just now realizing the parallels there. I haven't seen that, but yeah, sure. We can call it a self-portrait if you want.
Yeah, yeah, excellent.
I'm
Yeah.
not nearly as strong as this guy though.
And it's a great look. I'm not gonna, you've got to work on your beard though if you want ringlets in it,
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, and probably some hair dye too because that beard is red, my man.
yeah, it's proper red. Brilliant. So
Yeah.
that's good. That's where. So you started that. When do you think you
Mm.
did this?
Probably it must have been in, yeah, I'll say probably 2020.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's incredible. Wowee. That is stunning. So I'm just going to skip through some photos. Which one would you like to see next? I'm just trying to think. If I skip through, you can stop me one and see when
Yeah.
made like a paradigm shift in your art. There's some
Oh, this guy. We can talk about
this
this guy.
perfect because this
Yeah. So,
this one is on a completely different level. So please don't tell me you went from dwarf to this.
no, I mean there was a little bit of a period in between. This was my first 75 millimeter scale.
It's a
Um,
classic, isn't it?
yeah, it's a nice model from Big Chat Creatives. Of course, looking at it today, there are probably a million things I would change if I were to paint this again. And I probably wouldn't paint it again because of how little freedom there is to interpret the figure. Like the colors are given in the sculpt,
Right.
right? We have to paint this guy red and gold. Of course, we have to. Um,
Yeah, this is like
but
a what do they call them out of 300? What was that? Remember the
Spartan,
Spartans? Yeah,
yeah,
this is definitely that, isn't it?
yeah. Uh, and yeah, I got him probably. This is maybe 4 months after the dwarf. I want to say something like this.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, because I just very quickly felt when I started painting the smaller miniatures that I was really drawn to having more space to paint because like it's when you paint the gaming scale, I think you're kind of oftentimes kind of limited to painting what's there. Like you don't get to interpret the material a lot because uh, you have to just kind of follow the recesses and the edges of the sculpt,
Hmm.
which is nice if you're painting contrast paints or if you want a dry brush and things like this. But if you want to get into like the more advanced painting techniques, things like non-metallic metal, which is what I try to do here. Um,
Brilliantly.
having that having more space, just as we talked about with the busts, is like it's a challenge, but it's also like a great opportunity because it's a bigger canvas to paint on.
Hmm.
So you get to like unfold your idea on a much larger scale. And this is just what drew me to painting bigger stuff. And so I bought the 75 millimeter, and not too long afterwards, I got a bust. And then from there on, I just got obsessed with busts, and I've been painting that mainly. I have a few 75 millimeters as well,
Hmm.
which I'm now like dawning on me that they're actually also like kind of cool because you get to do the base, everything like this.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, from here on, I didn't really look back to the gaming scale ever again, and I haven't painted anything gaming scale in, yeah, probably since this guy actually, almost.
And it's such a profound uh, change, isn't it? You know, like the scale. Obviously, you've got a much more canvas to fill with, you know, paint and that. But just what I'm staggered about is like your understanding of, you know, light and shade, and you know, like you've talked about the non-metallic metal, and we can see it on the breastplate here. Um, it's just so much better. And so, how did you get from that stage? Obviously, the model's different, and it gives you more freedom. But what are you doing in the background? Have you been studying? Have you been looking at other miniature painters or stuff like that? How have you got from there to this? Because it's such.
Yeah, yeah. So at this point, I'm probably just watching YouTube videos, honestly. Um, this is where I got my knowledge from at this point, and not too long after painting this guy, I bought another 75 mil that had like a proper instructional with it from a Polish painter named Krzysztof Kowalczyk, and we'll talk about him later because I have some more pictures. Um, and I think this is, for me, that was like a real eye opener to see educational material made from people who aren't hobby painting but are actually painting on a professional level, so box art
Hmm.
painters and things like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Box art is like, except obviously maybe the Golden Demon standard. You know, they're not professional, are they? Well, some of them are, but you know what I mean. They're very high quality, but they're not box art. They're not busts usually, are they? They're usually dioramas and miniatures. But the box art, for me anyway, is held in very high prestige because some of them are is ridiculously good, aren't they? They look like photos or paintings, you know. There and but with so I had a long gap between my first, you know, bash with some paints as a kid and that, and it's only really I had a little stint in 2010 with my son, but it's only when I come back to the hobby to a couple of years ago that I realised where this thing had gone. You know, because I was still very much like a Warhammer-y D&D sort of thing. But then seeing these busts and box art, that was completely new to me. I was gobsmacked at the standard. And like you, I mean, I've tried to emulate, you know, and do something I like orcs, you know.
Mhm.
But so inspired, you know, this little bust we got there. This is based on a Paul Bonner uh, drawing, but it's
Mm.
Ivan Matter, I think. No, not Ivan Matter. I beg your pardon. Uh, Paul Masson,
Mm.
sculpt, and so I feel this natural draw to bust painting and stuff like that because it's just stunning. You know, this NMM is just breathtaking to see, isn't it? And I don't know, I've not actually held a model which is, you know, got all that lot on there, so I don't know how it works when you turn it around because I get there is some element of that as well, that you're kind of getting what the artist wants you to see in the photos. But yeah, when we look at this, we can see, you know, you've gone for highlighting and different shades. It just seems like, yeah, you've just really learnt very rapidly, and that's encouraging for me because was this your first attempt on this model, or did you scrub it out and do it again, or do you have any restarts?
No, this was my first attempt on the model. Yeah, I didn't like strip it and anything. I've never stripped a model.
No,
Um,
that's interesting.
Yeah, I think for this one, I think it's a good start. This one, but today I would definitely make the highlights on the chest smaller and on the abs as well, because on the abs it's like it goes into white way too quickly,
Yeah,
and
right.
especially for it being such. I think the white that we have there, the placement of it is all right, but I would definitely use more of the red in the midtone because we have the red on the cape. We
Yeah,
could use that in the midtone and into
bit
the
more of
like
this.
deeper.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, but even also like making that even warmer using the red because we could have like a reflection of the red cape on the breastplate there.
yeah, yeah. That's
That
good.
would be nice.
I think the shield is awesome. Shield looks really good. I mean, it all looks really good. And I get what you're saying. That is a super bright day for that to be that white. Um, but
Yeah.
so later on, you progress in that they're quite thick coats of paint you've got there. I can see, the transitions are quite, they stop and start. Whereas the glazing that you do now, you can
Mm.
see that transition is, very refined. So yeah, that's a heck of a second, because it's just phenomenal. I can imagine that on your mantelpiece, looking
Yeah.
very, very, very awesome.
But also don't get me wrong, there were a ton of miniatures between the dwarf that we
Hmm.
saw and this guy here. Like
Yeah,
did paint a lot of small guys, and I did try Inamen on smaller scales before jumping into this.
yeah. And some people do it, don't they? Some people are phenomenal at that scale. I have
Mm.
had to buy myself some magnifying glasses with a little LED on it now because my eyes I can't really
Yeah.
that's because I'm old. But yeah, it's good. So that must have been very encouraging when you did this. You thought, oh man, this is something else. Um, a new passion was formed. I mean, look at that tip on that spear. That that just looks right, doesn't it? Even though you might say now, yeah, okay, whatever, but that it
Yeah.
it does look right. It
Yeah.
registers right. The light looks good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To
I think that the placement is good today. I would maybe change the colors a bit because I think the like the cold temperature and the cold steel that we have out there is so foreign to the gold that like fills up the rest of the figure. So it stands out in a way that's not too pleasing. So I would make the highlights much more yellow today, I think,
okay.
to try to make a tie-in with more of the rest of the figure.
Yeah, and I guess the environment that he'd be in as well is
Yeah,
going to be very sunlit, isn't it? Yeah, not like
yeah,
not a northern European climate.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a good point. And that's the sort of thinking that you don't want parts of a miniature that don't tie in together. They have to be um, homogeneous. I think that's a word.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's like he's sticking the spear into like a different dimension or something. That's what it looks like to me. Like it goes into like a completely different environment, a
Yeah,
different temperature.
you could get away with it in D&D, couldn't you? But this
Yeah,
is
yeah. On
this is
this
a
scale, not so much.
yeah, brilliant. Okay, so I spoke to you before the video that I've primed this guy up, and I think it
Mm.
would be good for our viewers as well who are wondering, maybe they've never done a bust or whatever. Where do you start? Because it was kind of easy to sculpt this. Not being funny, but it was quite. I just dread painting it. Yeah,
Mm.
and because something that I think was quite good, I could ruin very very easily with some like weird paint. So it would be very handy if where do you start, Multi?
So for me, I lately I've been working with uh, with much more of like restricted palettes. So now I create the entire painting, like the entire paint job, from no more than 3 to 5 pigments.
Okay.
So I'll have so I taught a workshop recently where we did magenta and like it was not cyan, but it's like a greenish blue and yellow. Something like a yellow ochre, not like a very strong yellow, but like a more earthy yellow. And then of course you have black and you have white. And so this gives you a lot of if you know your color theory, this gives you like uh, almost all the edges of the color wheel. You can mix almost any color from these things. So like historically, painters used to have like a much smaller selection of pigments than what we have today. And so if you study color theory, you can you can mix anything you need from these pigments. And your first paint job using this restricted palette is probably going to look it's probably not going to be as good as your last, but it's I think it's a very good practice because I think you learn a lot from doing it. And even though you're working with, right, so if you have like cyan, magenta, and yellow, you could think that, oh, this is going to be a very cold scheme and it's going to have a lot of visible cyan in it, it's going to have a lot of visible magenta in it, and it's going to have a lot of visible yellow in it. And it really, once you get to know your paints and once you learn the theory behind mixing, it really doesn't have to be this way because you can mix whatever you want of browns and reds and greens and things that aren't violets, things that aren't necessarily in the restricted palette, but things that lie in between, and you can mix those paints and get something like this. So even though this figure was painted with mostly cold palette, we actually got a result that was kind of warm looking
So have I got that
in most of the
picture?
figure.
Shall I skip through and
Yeah,
you,
sure,
yeah?
we can have a look.
Let me see where that figure is. Which one would you like me
Yeah,
to stop on? See if
it's
I can.
it's like the orc girl bust thing.
Is it this one? No.
So right now I can only see myself.
Oh, beg your pardon. Let me get this on the right screen. Gallery. Beg your pardon.
This could be another example of it as well,
Okay.
actually. So I think all of my more recent works are made this way. So this was created from blue and I think it's blue and magenta and yellow also, I want to say, looking at it now. I think this is it. And so here we're going for something that has a very strong ambience. And of course, this is kind of left as a sketch. I didn't refine this, I didn't blend it.
Mm-hmm.
But here we're going from something where you imagine a light source that kind of cancels out the local color. So this is another great place to start if you want to paint your figure.
Yeah, I'm
And think
looking to
about,
the side. Sorry, I've got two screens here. I should be looking
that's
at the
okay.
stream, shouldn't I? But I'm just daydreaming at this phenomenal model. Yeah.
That's okay. So you asked where I start the paint job,
Mm-hmm.
and so this could be a place to start, right? You could think about what is the environment. So for me, I'm imagining some sort of cyberpunk night scene with like very strong lighting that like so neon lights, for instance.
Yeah,
Neon lights
it's
will
artificial. Yep.
yeah it'll change the whole color of the surface. Whatever you shine a neon light on, it can make it look the color of the neon light.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think about this when I mix the colors and when I place like the lights. And of course, we're working with something like a warm and a cold balance here. So we have a red light coming from beneath and a warm light coming from above. And I like to do this with having multiple light sources and having multiple colored light sources come from either side.
So would you have used a reference to, say you have no idea, you can't recall, would you have used any, do you use any references for lighting or anything, or you just work it out as you go along with your imagination?
I think references are a very good starting point, and especially when you're trying to do something new, something that you haven't done before. I think references are like a super useful tool to analyze what how materials behave in real life
Yeah,
and which properties of those things you want to incorporate into the paint job and which properties you maybe want to bend a little to your artistic interpretation.
yeah. So just thinking, there's that saying, isn't there? The uncanny valley. The eye can detect something that isn't quite right very easily, and that's what you're up against when you're doing maybe some of the fantasy stuff. You can get away with it, and we like this. I'm going to guess that this was done on your workshop with Craft World. Was this
It wasn't actually.
it
This
wasn't?
was done afterwards, though.
Oh,
Afterwards.
okay.
Yeah.
Because the palette and the way the application of the paint looks familiar to me. But yeah, fantasy you can kind of get away with it, but only so much because the eye still looks at it and goes, "No, that's wrong. It looks wrong."
Yeah.
So reference material, and I'm guilty of it. I probably need to instead of just like getting into the paint, I need to study like how light affects muscles and armor and stuff like that, so I can lock that in. So then I guess you operate more on memory and intuition the more you've studied the real reality of it, and you can know what boundaries you can cross and sort of express some fantasy in those areas. But yeah, okay, so reference is a must really when you're starting out if you want to get past that sort of uncanny valley.
Mm. Yeah, so speaking to that, I think it was Charlie Parker who said that you have to like study all of the scales and learn all the music and learn all the theory, all the rules behind, and then once you get down to it, you have to forget all of that shit, and then you just have to play.
I love
And
what
I
you just
think
did there, mate. I love that. Charlie Bird Parker, yeah. Oh my goodness, you just threw that in there. That just, yeah, brilliant. Yeah, so we're talking about a jazz musician now, then, and jazz is notorious for going off piste and just like doing all these meandering solos and stuff like that. So that's brilliant. What an analogy, man. That's cool.
for me, it translates very well to painting because it's like once we know the rules, then we can start to bend them. Because if you don't know how to paint semi-realistically, and by realistically, I don't mean like photo-realistically. I just mean if you can't paint something in a way where the viewer looks at it and goes, "Oh yeah, that's a believable skin tone," or "Oh yeah, that's a believable leather jacket," or "That's a believable non-metallic metal," or whatever. If you don't like know the fundamentals of how these things interact with color and with light, then it'll be much harder to do something like this where I am like very purposefully breaking some rules, right?
Yeah.
Um, so
Well, yeah, that's
a
right.
good
You're not given the license by the viewer. If they're not like gobsmacked by your ability to start with, they won't let you go off piste, will they? Because you're like, oh
mhm,
no, skip, skip, skip. And you know what?
yeah,
It's like on Instagram. How many figures, how many paintings can you see? How many bits of art can you see in one day? A phenomenal amount. There's only a few that stop, and you go,
yeah,
oh my days, look at that. That's just, and look what they did with it, and
mm,
that's what you're on about, isn't it? It's that license that the viewer will give you.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
brilliant.
And
Yeah,
so this
sorry.
this was what was so freeing about the craft world workshop. And I have my piece from the workshop here also, and we can talk more about it. But this is the approach that I've been using since then, restricting the palette and trying to care a lot less about local color and care a lot more about ambience and just focusing on getting the values right. And if you get the values right, the color is really not going to matter as much.
And this is what you're on about. I'm gonna assume, because when I look at this now, I see a freedom in this. Yeah, which when I see your videos where you're glazing and stuff like that, it's a discipline, isn't it? It's a certain thing that you're doing. But here, it's like you're expressing yourself in color here, aren't you? And it's quite
Mm,
abstract. The contrast is there. You're building up light and contrasting the shadows and stuff like that. And like this is all going to come together majestically when you start glazing it, and you get the transitions and stuff in there as well, unless you leave it like this, because this is another style, isn't it? This is a bit more
yeah.
sort of, and obviously when you look at it in your hand, I mean, how big is this 50 mil?
Uh, it's probably around the size of
Have you?
it's like this or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. Yeah, so it's a bit more than that, and it's about 60,
Yeah,
60 mil or something like that. But
yeah,
again, so it's very easy to sort of look at something under the microscope like that and go, "Oh my gosh, look, that looks a bit heavy." But
yeah,
when you draw back and you just see the composition, and then imagine it, at nearly only 2 inches, just over 2 inches, the eyes just, oh yeah, that is so good. Yeah,
mm,
and that takes some courage to paint like this, doesn't it? Because it's contrary to how we, when you're a kid and you're colouring. No, it's loose, and actually, I've got a painting from my daughter when she was about 8, and it's so loose. It's brilliant.
yeah,
It's absolutely fantastic. It's framed, and but we put ourselves in this real tight confine and think every part of the miniature's got to be consistently covered and stuff like that, and it's kind of squashing that sort of, I guess it's emotion, isn't it, that you're building in your work. That's yeah, we need, but like you said, and we come back to that, you can improvise when you have the basics down and you know them inside out and backwards, and that's the discipline, isn't it?
Mm.
And you've studied.
Yeah, and I think touching on what you just said about wanting to paint the whole miniature evenly or something like this, I think the worst thing about this is that when we uh, then like impose these restrictions on ourselves to say that in order to finish the miniature, we have to finish every part equally, or we look at like Golden Demon results and we think that our paint job has to look like a Golden Demon Slayer sword winner or something like this. It takes away the joy of painting
Absolutely.
because it becomes something that you can't do because you don't have the technical know-how or you don't have the practice of painting smoothly in this way. And then because you can't do it, you feel bad about yourself, and then because you feel bad about yourself, you start avoiding the hobby altogether.
Yep.
So
That's
really,
common,
like,
isn't it?
yeah. The most important thing in whatever you paint is that it gives you something good, because uh, we're here to like spend the time that we have for the hobby in a manner that gives us joy, because there's so much work in life. Like, there's so much other stuff going on, and we have so little time to actually sit down and paint miniatures. So it should bring us some joy. If you're not like following the joy in painting, then I think you're it's not gonna last, and I think you're going the wrong way.
I think
That's
you're
my
right. Yeah,
my
yeah,
philosophy.
and that is evident. So I asked you earlier, did you scrub that model and give it another go? And you was like, no, I never do that. And that's a great response, isn't it? Because it's like, I did what I did, and I'll learn from what I did, and I'll move on, and the next one will be different. And
Yeah.
it may be, and if every time you'd never get off one model, would you? You'd just keep scrubbing it and trying to, but
Yeah.
like this one,
And yeah.
this one I did, I like I was set out to learn how to do some OSL with an airbrush, and I ended up putting more just without an airbrush on it. But I got something down there. But like I keep saying, should I go back to it? Should I go back to it? But my heart's not there to go back to it. I actually like how it looks. And it's you can't necessarily see it on here, but there's like some veins and stuff on there. There's some colours in that, which I was very chuffed about. So I'm just gonna leave it.
Mm.
I might get it onto proper little plinth and stuff like that. But then I'm terrible at that. I'm terrible at finishing these things. This guy's still on a bit of cork.
Mm.
We'll see. Maybe I need
And
someone who does that to teach me.
yeah. And I think that's such an important part, because there's so many painters struggling to finish their pieces.
Yeah, and
And I get it, because it's like when you finish the piece, then you're like it becomes like you're confronted with the fact that you can't paint anything better than this. So a finished miniature is like a statement about what you can and can't do as a painter.
yeah, it's a diary as well, and it's a journal of your progress. And I think as one, there's no point in carrying on if your heart has said, "And I finished with it." I'd like to plinth them. I'd like to get them on
Mm.
some sort of stand, so they're decorative. But at the moment, they're in a like little corner in the kitchen, out of sight. But
Mm.
yeah, one day I'll do them justice and get them plinths. But yeah, it's a wonderful hobby, but there is that element, isn't it? There's like this little darkness, about what you're capable of, and it's not good enough and stuff like that. And we've got to really fight with our own minds sometimes when we're doing things like this, because we're totally unrealistic with we delude ourselves, don't we? We see a golden demon, like, like Sergio Calvo stuff. You'd be like, my gosh, it's phenomenal.
Mm.
Yeah, it is. It's phenomenal. You'll probably never be as good as that. Yeah,
No.
but if it inspires you to pick up a paintbrush, job done.
And this is what good painters want to do. they, I think it would be heartbreaking to paint something that made other people want to quit painting.
Oh yeah. Well,
Right?
yeah,
This is
yeah.
this is never their goal.
No.
And when we look at it this way, I think we're doing them a huge disservice to the years and the hard work that they've put into creating beautiful art.
Totally. Yeah, because
Because it's
he'd have put in
yeah, it's
years and
like
years, wouldn't he?
yeah. And it's like the last thing these guys want to do is deter people from the hobby. In fact, like they have a probably many of them like a financial interest in bringing people into the hobby.
Of
It
course.
means more box arts for them. It means more people on Patreon for them. So
Hmm.
like I think it's totally skewed to look at these great painters and say like, oh, I could never do that. I might as well just stop trying because like this is your ego talking.
Yep.
It's not your creativity, and you were attracted to this because you wanted to be creative.
Yep. No, brilliant. That's exactly right. So yeah, it's like most things in life, and we have pride and ego and stuff combating us all the time. So yeah, it's good. It's good to get over yourself. You feel like liberation when you can just look at something and go, "Oh, that was what I did. That was
Yeah.
something I did. I'm happy with that. I'll move on. Next time I'll try something different." And that's what I've tried to do in my my hobby, and is like just rather than just like stick on 25 or 28 mils or whatever. I've done very few of those. I'm like, oh, I could sculpt something. Oh, I could, I've got this ridiculous size Necron thing that it was like part of a competition, and I never done anything like it before. It's not brilliant. It's not terrible, but it's mine.
Great. Yeah.
So
Awesome.
celebrate it, innit? Celebrate what you can do, and then celebrate the fact that you can always learn and get a bit better. Yeah, and your profile is a testimony to that, isn't it? Because you've gone from little little version of yourself to to some incredible busts. So well, I touched on it, and you've learned a lot from your workshop with Craftwork Studio. Are you on their Patreon, by the way? Do you follow them on
Not
Patreon? No.
no.
Okay. So I just wanted, you know, do they encourage you to send you know artwork back to them after a studio or workshop?
Yeah, like they have a lot of engagement on their social media, and they're very good with. I mean, so they of course they charge for like
Critique, yeah.
actual feedback
Yeah, of
and
course.
coaching and things like this.
Hmm.
So I'm not saying like just send them your stuff and they'll give you feedback. Of course, it's they have way too much work to do
Hmm.
to give this out for free. But they're very they have a very active social media profile, and they spend a lot of time on it, and it's a big part of their brand. And they've of course we've had some chats with them afterwards. It's been
Yeah,
great. They're
they're
very nice people.
phenomenal. I mean, I've not met them. I've had replies on Instagram from them and that, and you can just see they've got a heart for people as well.
Yeah.
They're a wonderful couple, aren't they? And Marco's just done his first sculpt as well, hasn't he? Really good looking sculpt. They say if you can paint, you can sculpt, don't they? I've heard that said a few times, and so that must mean if I can sculpt, I can paint. So that's by
Yeah.
reverse logic.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Then the question is, can you sculpt? But
Yeah.
so
And which one comes first, huh? Chicken or the egg?
yeah. So let's just let's show the viewers this amazing couple. So here we are. Look, what a great photo.
Yeah.
There's you down in the bottom left or right, whichever way you're looking at it.
Mm.
Now I know Marco, and I can't remember his wife's name. Just remind me his wife's name. Can you remember?
Alexandra, I think.
That's it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. And then fellow students. So this was in Copenhagen.
Yes. So this is down in Kromenot where we had the
Ah,
workshop and where we have all the local miniature painting things here in
so
Copenhagen.
these are all your homies. These are all
Yeah.
your people. Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's
One
it.
guy even came in from the US to be here. The guy in the back with the top guy in the back in the middle.
What was it?
He has like a little bit of gray hair.
Yeah. Oh, this one here.
He
Is
came in
it
from the
the one with the beard? Really tall.
yeah. Like in the middle, but not so I can't see your cursor, but in the
Oh,
middle,
sorry.
the guy in the middle with the beard in the back.
Yep. I can see
Anyway,
him.
it doesn't matter. But this guy came in from the US to be there, so that was very cool.
Excellent. Well, that is something, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Ah, lovely. That's very nice. Very nice. Yep. And that's where all the magic happened for a couple of days. Yeah.
Mm,
Brilliant. I saw their holiday photos because they went and had a tour of Copenhagen as well, didn't they? I'm
yeah.
assuming that's the same trip. So yeah, looked very nice. Good. Yeah. So that's exciting stuff. I don't know if I've got any more photos from their time there. Well,
I think I have the figure that I painted at the workshop. It's probably here
oh
somewhere.
right. Okay. Well, on the photos.
Yeah, it should be here somewhere. Just keep scrolling.
Yep.
It's like a very colorful.
Oh, now
This is another picture from the workshop.
so Marco's looking at a glaze that he's just formulated there, I think, isn't it? Yeah. It's a glaze in making. So is that a local tipple, a local beverage?
This was something they brought them from Serbia. This was a Slibovic, like a plum
Oh,
liquor. Yeah.
okay. Now I'm assuming you had those after you painted.
Nope. This was 10 in the morning. We started with
Brilliant.
this.
Oh, that's fantastic. What a way to start the day.
Yeah.
Oh.
This is the guy. This is the guy I painted at the workshop.
And I can tell this is the guy actually now I see it
Yeah.
because this is very much their style, isn't it?
Yeah, because the color is so extreme on this one.
Brilliant. But
And yeah.
yeah, go for it. Talk us through it, mate.
Yeah, so first I just really tried to embrace their philosophy of using a restricted palette and then just going very, very free with the colors and only concerning myself with values in terms of representing the materials, and everything else was ambience. So one side is very warm and sort of orange, and another side is cold and much more like a lilac purplish.
Over here,
Yeah, the back there.
yeah.
Um, and so this was just such a freeing experience to have for me, because it was like the way they do it is that they do an underpainting, which is just a very, very like a layer of dark, super saturated colors, and then from there they'll start to build brightness on top of that, and uh, just thinking about the just always like working in the ambience into the piece. So if you go to the hair, you can see that this is a place where I really, really used a lot of different colors,
Hmm.
and these are all mixed from just the few pigments, and this is the way that I think you kind of
And
retain some control of the paint job.
and none of them are really hair colours as well.
Yeah, not at
this is
all, not
this
at
is an
all.
impression, isn't it? It's an
Yeah,
absolute impression, and you could say white maybe for some people, but
yeah,
yeah, purples, blues, oranges, and stuff like that, and
yeah.
yeah, it's brilliant.
And the reason why this works is because of values. It's not because of color.
Okay, so talk to me then. Talk to us. Values, you know, contrast, all this sort of stuff. What terminology have we got here? What does a value
Yeah,
mean then?
yeah, okay. So a value is how black or white something is. So how bright is it or how dark is it? So something that has a low value is going to be very dark. Something that has a high value is going to be very bright.
Okay, that makes sense. Yep.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
naturally, you're drawn to contrasts, and between those opposite ends.
Yeah, so oftentimes when people talk about contrast, they're referring to value contrast. So having very dark shadows and having very bright highlights. And this is what makes something shine, for instance. This is what draws our attention to NMM in pictures, is that we have dark shadows and bright highlights. Um, but contrast can also refer to many different things, and I kind of use it like in a few ways the word. So it can also refer to like change in temperature, so cold colors versus warm colors, or um, like a change in saturation. So it can be something that's like a very grayish blue versus a super super strong, very very saturated blue. And this can also be a form of contrast. So it's just the contrast just means like a difference.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and this is to represent OSL more often than not. Yeah. So the object source lighting. You have to imagine where you want the light to strike the miniature, and work out the values of the colors as it's affected by the light as well. So this is something I sort of struggled with.
Mhm.
That first bust of Paul Masson, that there's lots of equipment and stuff. There's lots of detail on the sculpt, but I've just avoided painting it silver, and I've avoided
Good.
painting colours in there. I've just let the light do the let me show you. See,
Hmm.
there's lots of stuff I could have made brown and silver, and I could have put some metallics on there and stuff like that, but I've just avoided it to try and and this felt really odd. It felt extremely exciting, and that's weird to say, isn't it? But it was like, oh,
Hmm.
I'm doing something different. It's like I'm not
Yes.
going in there
Yes.
and putting colours on, which that should be leather, that should be silver, this should be brown, and I'm just like, okay, it's just there's light and darkness, and blues, and I'm imagining there's a torch somewhere, like in a cave or
Hmm.
something, and so that for me was like, oh, that's interesting. That's a huge step forward for me. That is. I enjoy it, and it's still pretty low quality, but it's something that is just like I'm trying to create the impression rather than just put all it, because that's like two colours and a few different. There's some blues in there, just to sort of get that saturation that you were on about.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, and I think you did well to ignore some of the local details in order to work on the bigger picture.
it would have
I
been
think
totally
this is
black, wouldn't it? It would have been that this is a cave setting. Everything's just going to be black, or it's been hit by light or
yeah,
moonlight or something like that. So that's what I was trying to think. Resist the temptation to paint this model the way you've always painted models.
yeah, yeah.
So,
And I think it ties in well to the model we're looking at here because it's like we can, if we really want to paint something that has a strong ambience, then we have to ignore the local colors to some degree. We have to know how the material behaves, but we can't use like leather brown, the bottle that says leather brown to paint all the leathers. If you want something that feels like it's strongly in moonlight, or if it's strongly in some other like special light source, just like the neon piece we looked at before, right? So we
mhm.
have to be able to kind of break the habit of painting materials isn't the way that we've learned how to paint materials, which is leather should have these three values and metal should have this and this value scale and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah, it is unlearning just about all that you think you know, isn't it? And
Yeah,
so by ambience you mean I use the word impression, but it's the same. It's the same word, isn't it? Isn't it? That context. It's like, what are you trying to depict in this miniature? And I mean, is that light? I mean, it's fantastic, isn't it? Like in it like a fantasy way of saying
yeah.
fantastic. This is like super otherworldly, isn't it? This elfin character or whatever. The
Mm.
colours, you've got the contrast there. And it's eye catching, isn't it? It's something that just strikes you and goes, "Look at me."
Yeah, it's maybe even almost too eye-catching.
Well,
It's like,
you were
yeah,
experimenting here, weren't you?
yeah, yeah.
This looks like like burnished metal, doesn't it? It's got that
Mm.
sort of like muzzle flare sort of transitions there, where it's like scorched or something. But that's not the impression that you're trying to give. But that's what you see on this, isn't it? This like those. Um, but like this down here for me is phenomenal.
Yeah,
It just the eye just looks at that and goes, I get it. I totally get it. It's still got some odd color choices, if you like, if you're looking at it from
yeah.
like painting by numbers. They're odd colors, but the impression is good. The eye loves that. That's very, very smart. And we look at the actual strokes as well. Now, what scale, what size is this, would you say? Is it another one of these 50 stroke
Yeah,
60 mil
it's
sizes?
about the
Yeah.
same. About the same, yeah.
So
About the same.
is it a resin cast?
It's not a cast. This is a 3D print that they like. They have made this specifically for the workshop, and it's not available anywhere
Oh,
now.
cool. Yeah. That's a good way of doing it as well, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's nice. But look at those strokes. So this is again kind of abstract, isn't it? It's a sketchy sort of. We've only got 2 days to do this, guys. We want you to concentrate on these values and contrast
Yeah.
and exploring colours and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it works so well, doesn't it? And I've even posted a comment on one of Marco's thingies. Like, when my brain looks at some of your work, it looks like you've just sketched it. But actually, this has taken years of practice to hone that look, that ambience, because knowing where to put them strokes is the next part. And you can be loose, but like you have to know where to be loose.
Yeah.
So I want to just quickly take this right back because I'm at this white stage now. Um, how do you do it? Do you do black and then zenithal prime, which is like white sprayed from like the direction of the light? So are we doing it that way on these, or were you just nope? It's just white, or how did you go
Uh,
about basing this?
so the zenithal method is very common, and this model here was also made this way. It started as a zenithal, and what's nice about the zenithal is that it tells you where to put the focus on the model, and this is often like always going to be on the face mostly, especially for a bust, because naturally this is where we want to look.
Yep,
This
makes
is another reason
sense.
why the eyes are always what impresses people when they don't. If you take a miniature and show it to somebody who has never painted a miniature or doesn't care about miniatures, and they pick it up and look at the eyes and go, "Oh wow, I can't believe you painted those eyes like this." Because this is what like naturally this is where our attention is drawn.
Yep.
So you can start from the zenithal for sure. If you have an airbrush for painting something larger, like what you have there, I think an airbrush could be a very very useful tool. And then just think about, because the way I understand the sculpt that you have there is like there's the face, but then there's also the hands in front of it. So in a way, the hands are maybe a little bit like they're very integral to the story of that figure.
Yes. So this is a bizarre one. So
Yeah.
there's a guy on Instagram who does calendars, and they're all orcs, and they're very cartoony,
Mm.
and the head is one of his drawings or paintings. That basically is my homage to
Yeah.
his painting style. The guy is holding, so he's like this big buff augmented, super
Mm.
heavyweight orc, rip your head off or whatever, and
Mm.
then his hands are up there because I've got a calendar
Mm.
that he's going to be holding and looking at it. So this is a real abstract. He's super buff
Yeah. Yeah.
orc
Yeah.
who's like used to ripping everything, but he's just captivated by this calendar of orcs. So
Yeah.
that's why his hands are up there. So yeah, it's kind of in the face a little bit. If you look at it like that, it's
Mm.
like, okay, you've just destroyed his face by
You're
putting that
just
big
covering it
thing.
up like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's enough distance between it, So photogenic, maybe not, but in the hand, it should. Because he doesn't know this. I'm gonna send it to him when I've finished painting it. I'm gonna send it to him. So
Sweet.
I shouldn't have said that, should I? But
We'll have to release the episode late then.
yeah. Definitely. So yeah, so I painted this white because I thought I'm going to try something different. I've done the zenithal bit before, but really wanted this to be bright, and I'm not. So maybe I might put a dark green on,
Mm.
and then do some airbrushing on the zenithal OSL thing. We'll see,
Yeah.
but I'll work it out. But if you get a couple of photos and a nudge, then I might need to I need you to
Sure.
help me out a little bit.
Sure.
We'll see.
I think I would consider the viewing angle for this figure because it's not going to be head on. It's going to be more like 3/4 or something close to profile.
Like that.
Something like this. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. This is probably where we want to see the figure. So you could place the light source coming from this direction. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And that is what I've done with this little fella as well. So
Mm.
this is my first attempt at OSL, so he's bright
Mm.
on that side. Um, so as the lights come down, it casts a shadow on the back there. So very, very
Mm.
dark, and again, very uncomfortable to paint because, say one of my family come around and say, "Why is it black on the back?"
Yeah.
Well, you've got to imagine the light is coming. Oh, right, okay. But
Yeah.
it's a bit odd painting something black on the back, isn't it? It's not black. It's got some greens and blues and stuff in
Mm.
it. But so yeah, I've got. Again, this is from seeing art on Instagram and going, I want to try that. So
That's cool.
yeah, we'll get
Very
there.
cool.
We'll
This
get
is
there.
what the platform is good for. If being on Instagram doesn't inspire you to paint, then just go off of Instagram.
Yeah,
It's the only purpose it should serve you as a hobbyist, right?
absolutely, totally agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's enough about my stuff because this is your show, but it's good to serve the conversation.
Sure. Sure.
Okay, so yeah, mainly going for ambience. We're looking for values, contrast. We're also looking for a limited palette because actually that trains you to understand color theory better. That's something I've struggled with. Color theory, for those that don't know, is that the colors that you choose are really important and they should complement each other. Are there any occasions where uncomplementary colors work as well, Malte? What do you think about that? Or is it just, do you ever try that? I mean, is this color wheel savvy? Or is this breaking rules?
Um, it's hard to say because there's so much going on here. It's not really breaking rules, I think. At least not the rules as I understand them. I think it's important to preface any conversation about color theory with the notion that art is very subjective, and the things that people will say that work all the time are not, in fact, something that works all the time. It's something that will work some of the time, and it's something that will work specifically for them most of the time, and for you, it might not work.
And
That being said, though, there are general things that you can learn and practice to understand color better.
yeah, now
One,
that's, sorry, carry on. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So if you just look at the color wheel, I think one of the biggest things to try to understand it is to start by putting it into black and white. So if you have a color wheel and if you put it into black and white, you can see that different colors have different values. And this won't work if you're on like Photoshop or something digital, where you have like these weird color wheels that are like based on RGB and goes into white and things like this. But if you have a traditional color wheel, the ones that you get when you just Google the color wheel, you'll see that you'll have yellow in the top and violet in the bottom. And the reason for this is that yellow at its maximum saturation is a bright color, and violet at its maximum saturation is a dark color. So when we go around the wheel, we go up in color, and one side is going to be warm and one side is going to be cool. So when you pick your color scheme, you can think about if you take something that is on either side of the scheme. So we could say uh, violet and yellow. If we take that, that's the largest jump that we can make because it's a big jump in value in terms of the colors being maximum saturation, right? So and we certainly want contrast in our paint job, and it's become like something that is very like critical to the way we talk about and understand miniatures is that contrast is good, right? And it certainly is because it grabs our attention, it makes us look, and it's very, very important. If you want people to see your figure, you want it to have contrast, and it's important if you want to represent the materials in a like realistic way. You also need some contrast, but you need the correct amount of contrast. But you can easily make a scheme that's like green, yellow, and orange if you want, and have something that's much more harmonious and something that's like tied to that upper like third of the color wheel or whatever that is,
Hmm.
and have a color scheme here because you also have black and white to help you out here. So you could put your shadow tone could be something like a green with black in it, and midtone could be go over to orange, and then your highlight go over to yellow with white in it. You can paint something like this, and there are examples of miniatures done this way that where you don't have strong color contrast, but you have something that's harmonious. And if it serves if it serves the story, and if it serves what you're trying to portray, it certainly can work. I mean, we don't
Okay.
always have to have the complementary contrasts.
Yeah, I was going to say as well. So that's brilliant. Very good explanation. If so, a lot of people apply the opposite theory, don't they, on the wheel?
Yeah.
So how do you use a color wheel, for example? So like, you can see here that the orangey red or whatever, this orange is opposite the green, and they should complement each other. Yeah,
Mm.
that's the understanding of if you look at something opposite, then it's going to complement each other, and the eyes are happy with that. But what you've
Mm.
just suggested there, I've never heard that said, the harmony, and it makes sense. They're in the upper half there of the wheel, and yeah,
Yeah.
they sit fine next to each other, don't they? It makes perfect sense. They all look very comfortable there. Um,
This is why the color wheel is arranged like this. It's
yeah.
because these are the colors that are the closest to each other.
So yeah, I've always thought about the opposites, and I guess that's for maximum contrast. But actually, the neighbouring colours are equally as happy where they're at. So this may be very obvious, and I may be completely missing lots of things I have done in the past, but I've never thought of it like that. And I've not used the colour wheel a lot. I've usually gone with slight intuition because again, the eye is a very good judge, isn't it? Um, but I've never thought about putting these two colours next to each other, and there it is right in front of me. Oh, yeah, okay, that would probably work.
Yeah, I mean it's the figure is like or the model of the color wheel is giving you this information. And if you just look at it without thinking that this is something that I have to know the theory behind, if we just pretend to look at this, like you said, the eyes are a good judge, right? So if you just look at this, we think that, oh, okay, so violet and yellow is like the furthest apart from each other that we have. So maybe and like I would never, like, if I'm painting violet, I would never highlight it with yellow. I mean, it would turn like because then you're getting the gray, because when you mix these things, the complementaries, you're going into the middle of the wheel, and then you're losing a lot of the saturation, and that can certainly be nice, but it wouldn't be like
Do you know what? You're switching lights on for me here. This is exactly why I wanted you on the show because this is the sort of stuff that I have never even considered. So if you mix these two colours, you end up with something in the middle. And I was going to say to you about how you apply black and whites to colours to get this saturation because I'm terrible at mixing colours. You think that'd be rudimental, basic stuff, but I'm trying to get a certain colour and end up with brown. And I'm
yeah.
like, no, that's not what I imagined. So, how do I know what colours to use to get the desired colour? So, brown is very easy. You can get there a few ways. It seems I was end up with this dirty brown, so I go, oh my gosh, clean the
In
palette,
fact, you
try
can only
again,
get to brown.
try again. But most of us know that blue and yellow is going to give us a green, and
Yeah.
red and yellow are going to give us an orange. So is that how this? Are we looking for? I don't know how to mix some colours. I don't know why I always end up with brown. Sometimes.
Yeah. So it depends on your paints. If you have paints that are single pigmented, so this could be Chimera, this could be scale 75, the artist color range. It could be more traditional acrylics or more traditional oil paints even. Most of these paints are going to be single pigmented. If you come from wargaming and you have something like Citadel colors, or if you have something like
Vallejo.
Vallejo or AK, these are going to be colors that are mixed from multiple pigments. So this means that they have, like the yellows are oftentimes going to have white in them. And the blues and violets, some of the darker colors, sometimes they'll have black in them. So in order to really take advantage of the color wheel and the color mixing, you need to have pigments paints available that are single pigmented and then that are strongly saturated. Because if you mix a blue that has black in it with a yellow that has white in it, then you're effectively also mixing a gray in whatever that outcome is,
Yep, seen
right?
that. Yep.
So you'll get something. It might be green, Sure, but it'll also be gray. So it'll be desaturated green. And that can be a nice tone for many things.
Yeah, for
But
shadows and stuff. Yeah.
yeah. It's there's nothing wrong with desaturation. It's a very, very powerful tool to like bind things together, and it's something that you need to know how to use. But it's it's something that you have to be able to avoid with the tools that you have available if you want to paint this way.
Yeah, that's so interesting to me that I've never heard it explained. So, yeah, powerful. Single pigments, very interesting. That
Yeah,
may be helpful in my ambition to mix colours.
yeah. I can send you a recommendation for the paints that I would buy if I was looking
hmm
to buy paints now.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of Chimera and I've heard of
Yeah, they're
AK
good.
and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
so, but yeah, brilliant. And wow, I've not given this enough thought or practice, and I think well, I have a makeshift wet palette,
Hmm?
and I think I should have a session without any miniatures and just sit
Yeah.
there and mix colours. That's what I'm now thinking. I need to really sort of study this and maybe even make a few little notes of what colours worked and what with the paints that I've got. It's almost like calibrating with the paints that I have. So, do you just take a blob off your pot and put it on there and then just mix, or are you using pipettes to put it onto the palette? Are you that precise, or are you still?
Oh, this is just like a drop from the bottle,
Yeah,
or maybe if like a brush full, just like put the brush in, and then
yeah,
I
good.
have a dirty brush for mixing. And that's yeah,
Yeah, I don't want to get into it because I see some people with pipettes and stuff. I'm
yeah,
like, oh my gosh, no, I don't know
mm,
about that. But okay,
yeah,
brilliant. Yeah, that's something I'm note to myself. Mix night.
yeah. And it's a great thing for anybody listening. Also, if you have whatever paints you have, sit down with as close to the primaries as what you have. If you want, then go get paints, and then you can mix the entire color wheel. Try to see if you can like get every gradation, because there's also a very big difference in the strength of pigment. So blue is going to be a much stronger pigment than yellow. In often cases, this is why they put white into yellow to make it have a nicer coverage and make it behave more like the blue that you have in the set also when you buy the mixed paints.
So we're talking about opacity here, aren't we? Opaqueness. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
noticed that because oh my goodness, I had a very frustrating evening with red
Yeah.
once. I could not get that to cover properly at all.
Yeah.
And I figured it's the density of the pigment or whatever, the amount they put in there or whatever, the opacity that pigment offers was less.
Yeah.
And yellow is a notoriously bad one as well, isn't it? Many
Mm.
layers to get like a solid layer.
Yeah, so perhaps not surprising when you look at the color wheel, brighter colors generally cover worse than like or have less coverage than darker colors.
Yeah,
The rule of thumb.
makes perfect sense. Okay, and then you touched on something. You said primary colours. So on the colour wheel, or just in life, again, we kind of know this from school, don't we? We get primary colours,
Yeah.
secondary colours, tertiary colours. Are they all available on the colour wheel? So RGB, everyone's familiar with that nowadays as well, aren't they? The TVs used to be based on it, but everyone's got their fancy lighting and stuff in it. My son Brian has loads of it. He loves the stuff. But so RGB, red,
Yeah.
green, blue. Are they
Yeah.
their primary colours? I would
Yes,
imagine.
generally speaking, when we say primary colors, this is what we mean. Yeah.
So it does. See, I was just wondering, is it a colour that can't be mixed to create? So does that make sense? So a red is
Yeah.
only a red. You can only get it from one pigment. You can't mix two colours to make red. You can desaturate or brighten a red, and you get oranges and purples, but you can't make red with two colours. So that's primary nature. Is that what we're talking about?
Almost.
Right.
So this is the I think historically the understanding is that these are the primaries and these can't really be mixed from anything else. At least not the tools that were available historically. So at one point, I think painters or like paint manufacturers shifted to another set of primaries, which could be cyan, magenta, and yellow. And this can in fact mix more because you can easily mix red from cyan, or no, sorry, a red from magenta, but it's harder to mix a magenta from red. And so if you go with RGB, which again you totally can, and I think that you should embrace the limitations that are within the tools that you have and the few pigments that you choose, you're not going to get maximum, like you're not going to go to the edge of the color wheel all the way around. This is the beauty of working with a limited palette. But it turns out that the magenta, cyan, yellow combination can mix a broader spectrum of more saturated colors because we can get some of the violets in there as well as the reds. Whereas before, the violets and the magenta was a little bit weaker.
Okay, makes sense. And then secondary and tertiary colours are ones that we're using from the primaries, mixing down. Obviously, I say obviously, kind of almost want to say that green's a secondary colour because you've got a yellow and a blue to make it. Is that correct or incorrect? Because we still talk about RGB as well, don't we, as being primary colours? So
Yeah.
What's a secondary colour? I guess that's my question.
So orange and green, for instance, are secondary colors because we can mix two primaries to get a secondary.
Perfect. Yeah.
And the tertiary are then when we go a step further, and when we have mixed our orange, we can then mix a yellowish orange that is a tertiary color, or a reddish orange that is, as we can see on the color wheel there, that's like one step in between.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so my understanding is fairly clear. It's the application and mixing I need to work on now. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Well, we never talked about this before, but this is like, as we go into the conversation, this is what I like about these sorts of things. They just like these are things that I've always wanted to talk about.
Great.
Yeah, brilliant. So,
Sure.
okay, let's get back to some of your work then. What would we like to go to? Now, I'll tell you what I'd like to just quickly just look at. Sorry, just whilst because we've got loads of photos like that. Your club.
Yeah.
You've just started teaching, haven't you?
Yes.
So what's this photo here? What's this? Is this where your club's at?
I wish. This is a photo from Monte San Savino, which is a small medieval town where there's a great miniature show
I've heard of
in
it.
November. Yeah.
Yep, I've heard of it. I saw some of the there's some blogs and stuff on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, is that this as well? Yeah. Yeah, it looks
Yeah.
like it.
This
Yeah.
is in Tuscany, and it's such a beautiful place. And I just snatched a few of these photos, and I just love them for the the vibe that it gets. And again, we could talking about ambience, we could paint a miniature looking at this color palette that we have right here.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I have something that looks like this, and we can talk
Really?
about that later.
Okay. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, cool. So just quickly there. So workshops. Then this is your club that you're working with. Yeah. Was this your first workshop, or is this still Marco's?
Yeah, so this picture is from a trip that I took to Poland. So this is not Copenhagen.
Okay.
This is the guy that I spoke about earlier, Krzysztof Kowalczyk, Polish painter. He's the guy sitting with the cameras in the back there.
Oh yeah.
And he is was one of my or is one of my big inspirations. Like he's a very, very, very good painter, and if you don't know him, you should check him out. For anyone listening,
Heard the name.
I
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, like good luck spelling it because it's very Polish. But you can like I went to Warsaw to attend this workshop, and he taught a 2-day class on how to approach painting skin tones. And this was just such an amazing, eye-opening experience. And the stuff that I learned there is like so fundamental to my painting progress, and it was just such an awesome thing to meet him. And I'd been on his Patreon for a while and gotten some feedback online, and so it was so cool to go there and learn from him directly. And it's such a big difference. Like going to Patreon is a very good medium, I think, but going to an actual workshop where you're there, you can see things so differently, and things that are just hard to explain. Things like paint consistency and things like controlling like the wet palette or something about it just clicks. It's just different when you get to be there. It's just hard to convey some things on camera.
Yeah, we spoke about this, didn't we, in our call earlier in the week? That because I mentioned that YouTube. I've learned a little bit on YouTube and see some of the feeds, if you like, on Instagram and that. But you've witnessed the power, if you like, the benefit of being in the presence of someone who can actually coach you firsthand, and you can see exactly what they're talking about. And like you just touched on something like how to look after your wet palette, and I struggle with that terribly. I've got a makeshift one, a bit of sponge and some greaseproof paper. But do I get the water level right? Is it too wet? Is it too dry? And stuff like that. So this is a benefit of having someone's experience, isn't it? At source. So that's kind of changed your direction completely, hasn't it?
Yeah, for sure. This was a huge, and I you can see it also in my, if you look at my Instagram, you can see that this is the figure I make paint in just these 2 days is such a big step up from what I've been doing before.
Have I got that one on
Um,
here?
yeah, it should be on there. It's the Logan guy.
Oh yes, there we go. Right next
This
door.
guy, yeah,
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 right.
yeah.
Mm.
And so this is just uh,
You did this in two
when was
days.
this? Yeah, I might have worked just a little bit on it when I got home. Um, yeah, I did paint it after I got home as well.
Yeah.
But not too much though. But I'm trying to remember when I did this, when this was. It must have been in 2021. Yeah, 2021, I think. I went to Poland to do this.
That's amazing. What a
Yeah,
pilgrimage, huh?
yeah,
And it is a stunning miniature.
yeah, yeah.
So,
This was a real turning point for me, I think.
what was the biggest lesson that you learned? I mean, the shade in here is phenomenal, isn't it?
So I think there was two things with this paint job that clicked for me. One is the rim light. So you can see on the far side of him that he has sort of a greenish light coming in. And so this
What
is what,
here?
yeah,
Yeah.
but also more so down on the shoulder. Um, this kind of helps to define the silhouette of the piece and make it not just blend in with the black background, right? This gives a little bit more like of a 3D effect. And if you look at something like portrait photography, you'll see this this technique used a lot in portrait photography because and also like in illustration work, it's everywhere in 2D, but it's not so common in 3D. And the reason for this is that we, in a way, can sacrifice a little bit of the viewing angle when doing this, because when we pick up the model and turn it around, it looks weird that the whole backside is sort of green.
Yeah,
But
that's what I was
for
saying earlier, wasn't it? It's like it's very specific. This model, to get the full benefit of the paintwork, has to be viewed at this angle.
mm, but even so, I think being able to paint a rim light is like a great study in understanding light, and because you can easily, when you paint busts, fall into the trap of always having sort of the same light source and never really understanding why the light behaves as it does, because you always have the light coming from the direction of the eyesight or something like this.
Mm.
So there's a main light source that we are very comfortable painting. So that's the main light on this guy, and then there's a backlight, the rim light, which we are for some reason like it's much harder to paint, because when we turn the figure around and think, okay, what if light came from here? How would that look? We kind of go, oh, I'm not sure how the volumes behave now, and so this forces us to understand and see like simple volumetrics.
Yeah, and again, it looks so right, doesn't it? But it's counterintuitive in a way when you're actually painting it, because
Yeah,
it's an artificial. You're framing the miniature, and
yeah,
like what you said about it just mushing, blending into the background. If you didn't have that, is so true,
mhm,
isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So I'm trying to think. In photography, you'd have another light. The cameraman would set up that light specifically to get you that contrast, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in your mind, then you're doing this because you've been instructed. That's what we do. To make this really pop and stand out, we
Mm.
give it another light source. It's a much more desaturated light source. But what would you imagine that to be? Is this a reflective light, or is this just am I thinking about this wrong? It's not actually a light source. It's just a trope, if you like, to try and give this more depth and silhouette.
So I think it's both of the things you said. It totally can be a light source, but it can also just be something that we do as painters to portray the object as being three-dimensional.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I mean, sure, it can be reflected light. It can be any number of things. If you go out into like real life and try to look for rim lights, you'll see that they're actually not that uncommon. What they are like uncommon is to have such a nice, clear separation between one light source and another. Oftentimes in real life, they'll blend together, but you can see rim light in many situations in like indoor conditions or in nature.
So
It's not that uncommon.
you're calling it rim light?
Yeah,
Rim. RIM.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
RM,
I'm
yeah.
going to look out for that rim light.
Mm.
Thank you. I'm learning loads today, mate. This is perfect. This is so good. Oh
Good,
dear.
I'm glad.
Yeah, it's brilliant. This is exactly what I was hoping. Yeah, it's a phenomenal model. And I'm looking at the high definition. I've got two. I've got my laptop, and I've got this really nice screen which I'm looking at. So, and again, you've absolutely gone after the eyes. The eyes are the window to the soul, they say,
Mm.
and you can see that fixed gaze. It's just, and I don't. I've tried eyes. I from what you explained, I need to try harder with eyes because it's an engagement. It's like, oh, that miniature's looking at me. Oh man, I better look at it. Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
They do like grab a lot of attention, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow. Brilliant. Well done. And what a bust as well. I've got to try something like this. This is a big cutaway, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've got shoulders and all sorts in mind, but this is just like a couple of plates of the chest, and away you go.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome to
Brilliant.
paint. I love the big surface. It's like so nice.
You know, I watched a Creature Conference. It's by Modern Synthesis and Hydra and stuff like this. Tyranids and stuff like that. And they were talking about 3D printing. They were looking at the different like third-party Tyranid models and stuff like that. There's too much detail on them.
Yeah.
They're not there, and it kind of like, how on earth would you paint that? And
Mm.
there's not enough open surface to create the ambience on. It's all
Yeah.
just lots and lots of detail. That's something I took away from that and thought I need to be mindful of that because, yeah, that was.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of models being made that are just overly detailed, for my taste.
Mhm.
Uh, Probably most of the models out there have too much detail on them.
Yeah, and it kind of forces you to paint everything with color and the normal sort of lighting so you can see everything, because if you don't do it, it's just a bit too. No, I don't know. It could get very noisy very quickly as well. I don't know, but yeah, I think that from a sculpting point of view, that was a big thing that I took away from that. It's like, oh gosh, just because you can create the detail doesn't mean you should,
Yeah.
especially if you
Yeah.
want someone to paint it.
Yeah. It's no. Yeah. For me, I like the big, wide, open surfaces. For smaller scales, details are nice because they work well with things like contrast paint. But for busts and things like this, oftentimes sculpt it and then remove whatever is not absolutely necessary. Like
Yeah, and that's
it's
interesting.
my
So
philosophy.
yeah, so what I mentioned earlier about, like, if you can paint, you can sculpt. We've just seen Marco create his first sculpture. Is it something that you've ever flirted with? Is it something that you're thinking about? Have you ever tried to sculpt yourself?
I'll do it eventually. I think
It's on the to-do
eventually
list.
I'll get into it. Yeah.
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 Okay. Cool. Right. So yeah, I'm good at detours, aren't they? I asked you and then went off on my own little joyride. Where would you like to
That's
go
okay.
next, Malte? What would you like to look
Let's
at?
go to the druid, the guy in the tree, the ones I
Wait,
sent you
hang on.
pictures of just recently.
Hmm. Let me find him. Where this
There
guy?
we go.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
So this is my latest piece and something that I'm very, very happy with. I've gotten a lot of help on this piece by some really, really talented painters. One of them being Ben Comets. He's like a German guy. Do you know him?
No.
He's super, super good. And so I think what you have here is actually not the most recent pictures
Oh,
that
was there another
yeah,
day?
yeah, I sent you
Oh.
some
Oh, did you send some today?
yeah, yeah. If it's a bother, we can talk about these ones. It's not a problem.
Oh, yeah, no, I missed that today.
That's okay. Let's look at this.
Hmm.
So this is it looks just a tiny bit different now, but we're talking small details. Um, and this one I'm just very, very happy with the ambience on this piece because I think it struck a nice balance. And this was maybe a little inspired by sort of like the Disney movies that I grew up with
Hmm.
watching, like 90s Disney movies. Um, these sort of characters and this sort of color scheme.
Hmm. Yeah, it's very autumnal colours. So, like we saw that picture of, the Italy,
Yeah,
um, and it's very sort of,
exactly. This is what I was talking about when I said
yeah,
we can make a miniature from this picture.
yeah. And what a sculpt that is as well.
Yeah, and
I
again, it might have too much detail, just as we talked about.
maybe,
I
but
think there's a lot going on here, but it's Lucas Pina's sculpture are just wonderful.
yeah. Now this is a traditionally sculpted piece, isn't it? So we can marvel at his skill. 3D, the digital arts. There's a lot of guys moving from traditional into likes of ZBrush and Blender and stuff like that. And I understand that, but you see the difference in what they're doing. And there's this danger again of like, oh look what I can do! I can get that in there. I can do this, and all of a sudden you've overloaded the sculpts. There is a lot going on here, but it's 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 kind of unified, isn't it? It totally works. A little bit of
Yeah, I guess I've tried to
a,
unify it in the paint job at least. Has been
yeah,
my goal with this one.
a leaf beard. Yeah, it's really good. An old wise tree, and I mean the way you've painted it is very very warm. Yeah, you've got this Disney scene as you're on about here. But the fabrics. Now, painting fabrics, getting texture is another skill, isn't it, in itself? You've got these
Yeah.
fine lines here, and I've seen a couple of your reels that you've done, your posts on Instagram, where you've painstakingly gone through all these what appear to be random lines, but they're not, are they? So how do you approach fabrics?
Well, you have to think about again references. So if you look at something like denim, that has a certain texture to it because of how like the threads are woven in between each other. So if you want to paint denim, you want to paint like a line that goes down and something that goes like at a 45-degree angle on it. And this is the texture that you build. Straight line, 45 degrees, straight line, 45 degrees. If you want to paint something like linen, you're going to paint like crosses, like perpendicular lines, right?
Hmm.
If you want to paint something like fur, you have to paint uh, the shape of like individual hair strands. If you want to paint something like leather, you're going for material that wrinkles in these smaller kind of micro volumes. Um, so really, it's about at least that's like the type of worn leather that we'll oftentimes see in fantasy. Leather can also be like more polished and shiny and have a smoother surface.
Hmm.
But if we have old leather, which is what I've gone for here, we want something that has like that feeling of micro volumes and that feeling of, oh, this has been bent here like a ton of times, so there's like wrinkles
Yep.
uh, going down this crevice.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and it sort of it
yeah,
it bleaches the color out of it as well, doesn't it? When it gets creased a lot, the color sort of runs. Yeah,
yeah,
it's like the difference between his clothes, which Is this supposed to be leather, or is this just like a tunic? It's maybe.
Yeah, this is supposed to be leather. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you've got the leather strap
Mm.
of his, I guess his goodie bag, where he keeps his herbs and stuff in. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they got a nice contrast there, and it's a different type of leather. It's clear.
Mm.
Yeah. His beard, very nice. Hair is also one of these things, isn't it? You can get lost in really easy
Yeah.
and end up looking flat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess what I've taken from your painting, the more I zoom in on it, and again, we're looking for an impression, but actually, how do you go about doing this? Lots and lots of layers, lots of fine strokes, because actually get through the ugly stage, and that's exactly what the eye's expecting. It's expecting layers, it's expecting different values, and the brain's going, now it's a beard, but
Yeah.
look at that face. Oh my goodness. His eyes, they're just warm with love, aren't they? That's just
Mm.
crazy good. It's really good. And the tones. So what you said you had a lot of help, or you had some good advice and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What was new to you on this one then? What did you really take away from this mini? I mean,
Mm.
the background picture, was that something
Yeah.
was that the first time you'd done one of those?
I've done it once or twice before.
Okay.
And it's not something that I have a lot of experience with, but I think trying to make it like stylized like this serves quite well, or like it gives the uh, reminiscence of it being like a sort of like an old Disney movie or something like this.
Hmm.
But it's I think so with backdrops, it's like you have to consider if your figure if it's gonna help the figure or not. Um, it's something that's coming more and more into play, and I think it works well for a figure like this, where the viewing angle is very very decided by the sculpt.
Right.
Because if you turn this figure around, much of the backside is not even like sculpted.
It's just
So the backside of the tree is just
profile.
like flat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so a backdrop makes total sense here because we know just from looking at the sculpt before we even paint it
Yep.
that
No peeking at
we're
the
not
back.
gonna no peeking at the back. Yeah. Um, so that could be one thing. Another thing could be how to use the light to draw the viewer's gaze onto the points of the model that you want to bring attention to.
Yep.
So there's like a triangle of light that starts on the nose and goes upwards from there.
Hmm.
Um,
And
starts on the nose of the tree. Uh, and so this is what kind of helps us to bring the scene into focus. Because the scene, of course, is him and it's the squirrel and it's the eggs on the side there. And so we can use that triangle of light that starts on the nose of the tree and then tapers up to kind of show where we want the viewer to look. And
hmm.
all the leaves at the bottom and all the details at the bottom are thus just
Sorry.
they're there.
Yeah.
They're
It's
they're
being
good
blocked
enough,
there.
but
Yeah. Hmm.
they're not like in focus. They're just like yeah, they're just like a placeholders in a way because the
Hmm.
real action is going up further on the model.
Yeah. No, I got you. I was thinking trees literally, and this
Mm.
guy is a tree. But I was looking at
Yeah,
the light.
yeah,
For a while I was fixated on the contrast that you've put in there. In this fantasy wood, you've got the light there, so again the light's coming in this way, these trees are lit, this one's a little bit shaded and stuff like that, but you're obviously talking about this fella here and
yeah.
this triangle of light here. You're spot on. Yeah, that right there on the top, it's like, now follow me up here and get to the real main star of the show. But I actually think the tree is phenomenal. Isn't it beautiful? What a sculpt.
Yeah, it's a
Oh,
wonderful sculpt.
oh my gosh, look at those lines there for his mouth, and how
Yeah,
on earth did he do all this? Phew, that is beautiful, and I've seen it done
yeah,
several times. I think what I should do now that I've seen your version, is just look at all the different interpretations. That's one of the things I love about Instagram, is how people just view things and put their own stamp on it. Box art is great, but then look at, it's phenomenal. And I guess is that somewhere you want to go? Is that a direction you want to go in? Box art? Is it?
I'd love to. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I'd love to.
Makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, very very good. Who's the sculptor, by the way?
This is done by a guy whose name is it's Lucas Pina.
Lucas Pini. Yep, Yep.
And the way he runs his business is that he sculpts a figure and then he puts it on, like, you can pre-order it for 48 hours, and then afterwards it's never available again.
Oh, that's harsh.
Yeah, it's I think it's hard for us as consumers maybe, because there are some old sculpts that are like super super nice that's never going to be available again. But on the other hand, I think it's a great business practice for him because he's not investing more money in than he's making, so he doesn't have like expenses for having a big um, what's the word for it? Like
Yeah, facility to
yeah,
manufacturing. Yeah.
yeah. Like he's not he doesn't have like 100 models that he can't sell lying around.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
in this way, I really like it because it makes for a good business for him. And I also like that, there's so many models out there, some of which we don't get to paint. So what? There are many other models that we do get to paint. So if you miss
It's
something, don't worry, find something else. There's always
a lot
something.
of artists do that, don't they, with their prints? You know, it's a reproduction, but there's only 100 of them.
Yeah,
If you're lucky enough, you might have one. But you can
yeah, it's
imagine
a good idea
the
because
value
yeah,
of those prints are just going to increase with time, aren't they? So this is fine art we're talking about. We're not talking about 3D printed stuff. Well, that sounds a bit snobby, but you know what I mean. 3D, you've got an STL that lives forever.
yeah,
This is a limited offer. If you're
yeah.
lucky, you got one, and yeah, brilliant.
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean, if you're then at the right time at the right place, have the money to spend, then you get one. I mean, there's no like, I mean, if he got 10,000 orders and on the next one, he'd probably just make 10,000 of them. I mean, it's just he just makes them to order.
yeah,
That's it.
cool. Okay, right. Where would we like to go next? I'm just going to have a look at my notes. So
Yeah,
um, we touched on it. We touched on the fact that you're now instructing at
yeah.
your club. Which how's that going? Because I guess you know we talked a little bit about your progression. So the dwarf 2 or 3 years ago. Now now you're in a position where you're actually teaching and inspiring other people to paint. Um, so yeah, just talk about that. How did that come about?
So one of the ways in which the community here is run is that it's not based around one person. And what you'll see sometimes in miniature communities is that when we build the community around one person and that person, like the authority of that person goes away, the community can kind of scatter a little bit. And this is not how Chromonaut is run. Like Chromonaut is like it's very much a collective. And so if you think that you have the skills to do a workshop on whatever topic, you're welcome to do so. And so I just grabbed that opportunity and said, you know what, I think I'm at the level now where I can teach people who probably have painted a few busts or have never painted a bust before how to move from the gaming scale to something like this. And so I put the workshop together, and for me, it was like a huge success, and I feel like the students enjoyed it as well. I mean, that's what they said at least. Um, and I went home with so much knowledge about how I do things the way I do them, and what works and what didn't work in the way that I taught. So I'm really just trying to delve more into teaching, and I also have some private coaching lined up. So if anyone's listening to this and sees my work and thinks like, oh, I want to learn how to paint like that, of course you can follow the tips that I gave here. But I can also do private coaching if that's something you're interested in. Um, and yeah, just trying to build my painting into something that one day hopefully can be something that I can, if not sustain myself off of, then work with. Because like I said, I'm obsessed with painting and I want to do it as much as possible. So
Yeah, that's very obvious. And wow, what a great thing it is, isn't it? What a privilege it is to be able to spend time with people and teach them. And it really does sort of crystallize what you think you know as well when you have to explain it to someone. So it's good that you're reflecting on that weekend, and it's kind of forcing you to um, communication skills. It's forcing you to learn how to communicate, and not everyone learns the same as well. Everyone's individual, aren't they? So you have to adapt, and that keeps you on your toes as well, doesn't it? I've not taught art or anything like that, but I've taught somewhat before in previous guises. So it's a really rewarding process as well, as stressful as it can be, because you're responsible for someone's, you know, learning and stuff like that. But I guess it's like a lot of things. Once you've flexed a few muscles a few times, you get you a bit more comfortable with it. Like I was saying beforehand, my first attempt at this show was a completely stress fest. It was really difficult trying to press the right buttons and think about what to ask. But now we're on episode 4. I feel a lot more relaxed, and I can actually ask some decent questions rather than gibbering. So hopefully they're decent questions.
That's awesome, man. Practice make perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
I should also plug. I also have another workshop set up, which is in the physical space in Copenhagen. So if you're in the area or have the opportunity to come to the area, we are teaching a workshop sometime around in the weekend. That's something 20th something of September. I think 22nd of September. And Saturday I'm teaching painting, and a Sunday we have a professional painter coming in from Army Painter, the brand, and he's gonna teach like weathering techniques. So I'll teach you how to paint something pretty on Saturday, and then Thomas is gonna come in on Sunday and teach you how to make it look old and rusty and things like this.
Brilliant. And
So that's gonna be great fun.
yeah, and that's really topical at the moment, isn't it? Everyone loves to streak in grime and chip in stuff, and it does seem like there's a renaissance for scale models. With
Yeah.
the tanks and vehicles and stuff like that, which is great. It is really good, because that's only going to draw more people. It's going to break some of those barriers down, isn't it? There seems to be like a little bit of I only do airfix, airplanes and tanks and stuff like that. But actually, there's a lot of crossover, isn't there? Especially with all these marines being weathered and stuff now, space marines and all that. Not that we're going there, but
No, man, it's great. We're all just painting plastic. Let's just
yeah.
share our knowledge and have fun. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. That's going to be really good. So that's exciting. It's great to hear about that. Hopefully, uh, if people want to contact you for those workshops, do you want me to share an email on the tags on this, or is it just Instagram?
Yeah, just go through Instagram. That's the easiest for me. That's where I get most of the communication. And we also have, as down in the banner there, we also have a Twitch stream set up for the community of Promenade right now. And for the foreseeable future, it'll probably just be me streaming from home. But at some point, we'll actually be able to stream from the workshop and have some of our events streamed.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah. Will that be
yeah,
pay-per-view streams? Will that be? Do you think
I don't know. It'll be through Twitch, so probably not. But
no?
but we'll see. It's still need to get the equipment and everything for it. So
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? So, say there's people that are looking to stream or do like you've done, your posts of you painting, video feeds and stuff like that. Equipment is another massive thing, and I noticed the quality of your photos. See, I can zoom in, and I still have
mm.
amazing quality, no pixelation. It's very, very good. So, how photography and miniatures are very closely linked. I'm awful at taking pictures at the moment. It's another part of the hobby that I need to learn. Which I bought myself a second-hand camera, but it's there's more to it than I imagined. So yeah, what's your experience here in the 3 years that you've done this? You've obviously studied some photography as well, I should imagine.
It's a bit of a side hobby. It comes with miniature painting fairly easily, I think. But yeah, so I just also bought a secondhand camera, and then you just need to tweak the settings a little bit, know the temperature of the light that you have, and have a strong light, something that's diffused, something that's not too direct. So
So diffused is like just some grease paper over the actual bulb or something like that. Is it just to sort of take the
that's one way to
brightness
do
off
it.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. It's just to make sure that the light isn't casting any hard shadows, because you don't want hard shadows from the light that the miniature casts on itself, right? You want a light source that's gonna light up the miniature equally in all different parts of the figure, so you can see
Okay.
the paint job.
So
Um,
some people do it, but never understood why. So again, another
yeah,
brilliant. I should try that.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can think about it like this. So when you go out in sunlight, and if it's a very, very sunny day, you'll notice that you can see cast shadows everywhere. If like the sun is very hitting very directly, you'll see cast shadows everywhere. But if you go out on an overcast day, you'll see no cast shadows at all because the clouds
Clouds.
are kind of functioning as the way that the baking paper would over the light bulb, right?
Yeah.
They are diffusing the light so that we don't get those hard shadows. And that's what you want for miniature painting photography.
Brilliant. Oh, how many tips am I getting today? This is gold. This is really gold. And maybe there's some people groaning when they watch this and go, "Really, you didn't know that?" But this the whole point of this is to ask and learn and stuff like that. And I've really that was the whole mindset behind this was like I need to learn. How can I learn and how can that be fun and how can I share what I learn as well? So yeah, this is brilliant, fantastic.
Great.
Oh dear. So what else have we got on here? I've got yeah, we talked about the benefits of in-person tuition and that. We talked about that on our call earlier in the week as well, and like the huge benefit of having that one-on-one coaching and so yeah, I've got to get when I get myself in order. Like I've just moved to Texas, like nearly a year ago. I'm still waiting for paperwork to come through before I can actually work. So my wife's doing all the heavy lifting at the moment. But when I have the funds, I'm going to look up because I've seen some people advertising, in America, some part of America. And I'm trying to think. Sergio was over for Adepticon as well. And I looked at it, I was like, can I afford that? Can I? No, I can't, not this time. But one day I shall try and get into some sort of coaching because, if it's like the lights on, like I'm having now, over a call, I can't even imagine what it's going to be like in person. So, something I'm definitely going to try. The other thing that we've been talking for a little while now, but the one thing that I would maybe touch on, maybe a teaser for another episode, is the oil versus acrylics.
Oof, you want to open that up now? Yeah.
Well, let's just give it a
Yeah.
squeeze, and then
Yeah.
maybe that can cue us up for another episode. We haven't talked about another episode, but I mean, after this, it'd be stupid not to do another one from my point of view. I don't know how you feel about it.
Sure, man. Let's do it. Okay, so the super short version of oils and acrylics. Um, Oils are great for some things, and acrylics are great for other things. And when you try to work with the other medium, so if you come from acrylics and you try to switch over to oils, if you come from oils, try to switch to acrylics, you're going to appreciate all the things that you can do with the medium that you came from because you take for granted that these things are easily done. And so we can go into maybe the more specifics about that in the next episode.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, when would you? I guess some people are using both on their minis. I mean, certainly now with washes, oil washes are very common, aren't they? Especially when you're weathering stuff, and it's an easy win there. In bust painting, are people using oils and acrylics at the same time, or are they just, I only use acrylics over I would never introduce an oil onto an acrylic bust, or painting bust.
They're becoming more common. I think traditionally, I think it's been two camps: oil painters and acrylic painters, like staring at each other on each end of the spectrum, right? But now we're seeing people combining the mediums a bit more, and I think we're really getting the best of both worlds if we try this approach.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a learning curve, and if you come from acrylics, expect your first couple of oil paint jobs to look like you're learning a new medium, which you are.
Technically,
But
it's a lot different, isn't it?
a lot,
Yeah.
yeah. But it's so much fun also because it makes you have to reevaluate and not paint on autopilot. That's great.
Okay, I think we've whet the appetite a little bit there, but we haven't really. I mean, yeah. Next time,
Sure.
and we've only scratched the surface. You've sent me loads of photos, haven't you? And we've probably looked at, I don't know, 8 or 9. But this was a picture of your workshop, I'm assuming,
Yeah.
and it's such a great picture. Whoever your photographer is, they really know how to. For this shot is just like the intensity of like you're completely focused, and they're all like, yeah, okay, this is making a lot of sense now. The lights are
Yeah.
switched on, and they just can't get enough of it. It's brilliant, isn't it? So yeah, well done. And the helmet on this, oh my gosh.
Yeah. We can
So
talk. We'll talk about this guy next time, maybe.
yeah, exactly. We could
Yeah.
go on, couldn't we? But there's another
Yeah.
episode at least
For sure.
in this. So thank you so much, Malte, for being up for doing this, and we shall talk some more. But hopefully, if anyone's got any questions or whatever, this isn't a live stream, but there's comment section on the YouTube. So by all means, put some comments on there. Let Malte know, via Instagram, or if you're interested in some of his, workshops and stuff like that as well. Watch him on Twitch. Your first Twitch was hugely successful, wasn't it? That just
Yeah.
a couple of days
Yeah,
ago.
yeah. I was lucky to get a raid and like have a lot of viewers, and I completely like panicked as I saw this viewer count go up. But it was a lot of fun to try.
I never knew what a raid was until I was watching someone's, and they got gate crashed. They were raided by someone else, and I thought, well, that's pretty cool. Pretty
Yeah.
cool. That's brilliant. Well, I've had a great time. I've learnt loads. I'm going to take away loads of things to think about. The color wheel stuff and its saturation and all that lot. It's just phenomenal. Lights are on. The lights are switching on. So thank you very much, and yeah, goodbye.
Yeah. Thank you.
See you
Awesome
soon.
chatting. Yeah. Talk to you later, man.
Thank you, man.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.